This is Cogs, where we learn about cognitive science. Hi guys! So today I want to talk about theory of mind and also Piaget, because I mentioned both of those things in the previous video and I think good things to know. Alright, so theory of mind. Before all you philosophers get excited, it is not a theory of what the mind is. Theory of mind is just the ability to understand that beings other than you have a separate consciousness. This is not something that we are born with. We kind of develop it over the course of our infancy and early life. When a baby is first born, it doesn't really need to know that the world outside of it is somehow not aware of its inner thoughts. I mean, you know, it feels uncomfortable and it cries and the problem is fixed. So it's like, oh, well, of course things know what's going on. I don't know. So babies don't really need to know these things. The main test that they use to study this in children is called the Sally-Ann test. I don't know why it appeals to me so much, but they use puppets. It's pretty awesome as far as tests go. So in the Sally-Ann test, you have Sally and you have Ann. And I don't really remember which one has the candy, but one of them has a piece of candy and they put it in a box and they tell the other one, don't take my candy. And then they leave the room. And then Anne goes into the box, takes the candy and hides it. I don't know, maybe in her pocket or something. And Sally comes back in. So then you ask the child, where is Sally going to look for the candy? If we have an understanding of theory of mind, we know that when Sally left the room, she wasn't aware that Anne took the candy out of the box and put it in her pocket. So we would say Sally would look for the candy in the box. But most children will say that Sally will look in Anne's pocket, not realizing that Sally was out of the room and thus unaware. They aren't thinking about Sally's consciousness as being gone for that time period. So yeah, we also see that animals, for the most part, have very basic to not even all having theory of mind. I mean, if you're a deer in the woods and a mountain lion is chasing you,
you aren't really thinking like, oh, does that mountain lion think he wants to eat me? You're thinking, oh, mountain lion, therefore GTFO.
There's a test that they do with like a dominant chimp and a what's it? Sub, not subversive, not subliminal. Like the alpha chimp and the beta chimp. So the alpha is in the room with the beta and they take a piece of food and put it behind a barrier so that the alpha can't see it, but the beta can see it. Less dominant chimp would never take food before the dominant chimp because the dominant chimp would kick their butt. If the beta chimp knew that the dominant chimp could see the food, then they wouldn't take it, but if they knew that they couldn't see the food, then they would. Sometimes the beta chimp will take the food. It's kind of inconclusive. I mean, you really only need to have theory of mind if you have kind of a social environment. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, elephants and dolphins or whatever had theory of mind. Probably, you know, these chinchillas over here don't really have theory of mind.
You don't know what's going on. You don't know. You don't know.
And theory of mind doesn't mean that, like, you can't understand emotions or you can't have relationships with other things. It's just that you don't know where you end and they begin. You aren't thinking of them as having an alternate perspective. So theory of mind is really important to our development, as are a lot of other things. So Piaget studied how children develop certain concepts. He has this theory that you kind of slowly integrate concepts. So for instance, most children assume that the world is flat when they, you know, first go out and see there's a horizon, it's flat, therefore the world must be flat. I can see it, it's flat. But then you tell them, no, the world is round, and they're like, I don't really believe you. I still think that the world is flat most of the time, but I guess I can imagine this kind of hypothetical, not entirely real world that is round. And then, you know, eventually as an adult, if you are an adult who has been repeatedly introduced to this concept, eventually it's fully assimilated, I think is the term. But yeah, Piaget designed a whole lot of different really funny tests to show funny things that children don't know. And what I mean is, so if you have 2 rows of 7 checkers and you ask the child, count these checkers. So they count each row and the checkers are lined up evenly. And you ask them, all right, so are there more checkers here, or are there more checkers here, or are they both the same? And you know, the child has just counted out the checkers, so they're like, they're the same. Then you spread one of the checker rows out. Tricky, tricky. Magic happens. You're a magical being as an adult. Then you ask the child, are there more in this row? The one that's spread out. Or are there more in this row? The ones that's crunched up? Or are they both the same number? And the child, like 9 times out of 10, if they're over the age of 3, will be like, well, obviously there are more in the one that's spread out. And you're like, all right, count them again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, they're just 7. They like want there to be more. And then if you have a tall glass and you have a short, squat bowl, you show 2 containers that are the same. You say, do these have the same amount of water? And the kid goes, yeah, of course. And then you pour one of those containers of water into the tall glass, and you pour the other container of water into the short pot. And you ask again, which of these has more water? And they're like, well, the tall glass. You did some kind of magic. The kids probably don't actually think that there's magic. They just aren't even thinking about conservation of mass or anything like that. But yeah, so theory of mind and Piaget's various tests for children. 2 good things to know about. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff.
Ooh, you cutie.